welcome back to VKBP tutorials powered and supported by ABF. My name is Anna Engberg and I'm an audio engineer and a music producer, and I also work with the VKBP producer program in Stockholm. Today I'm going to talk to you about mastering and take you through one of my mastering projects and show you what decisions I made and why, and explain a bit about my process. So this is a song called Borderlands by Bulgarian Goddess that I mastered a few years back. And she was actually a student in the VKBP producer program back then. And it's a really great song, really creative and jazzy. So I usually listen at the beginning just to get an idea of what this song is all about. But I don't want to listen too much, just so that my first impression corrections won't be spoiled. So I listen through it a bit to get like an idea of what instruments there are, what this song wants to be. Because I want to help the song express what the song wants and what the production wants and where the mix is going. And I want to make that as clear as possible to the listener. And I also want to make sure that there aren't any unpleasant sounds or clicks or pops or anything like that. So what I usually start with is just a rough EQ. And as you can see on this EQ, it's not very large changes I'm making here. We're talking about 0.45 dBs and 0.56. This is a big one, 0.81. So as you can see, it's very, very small things I'm doing here. So we can listen with these corrections and without them. But already we're getting some more energy, a bit more energy, and also a bit more clarity in the vocals and the instruments. And that's, in this song, that's kind of what I want to do. And there we have a reverb and a parallel compression here. This one right here is for this parallel compression, which I usually I push it really hard and then I kind of sneak it in from underneath. And I also EQ it a bit before and after. So if we'll put this on solo at first, this sounds really horrible by itself. It's kind of low right now, but can you hear how that's very compressed and can't breathe? And that's actually just what I want, because I want to just slowly sneak this in until it gives me what I want. And I've also carved out some frequencies before and after I've added that to get I'm just adding what I'm kind of missing, if you understand. And I also have a reverb actually, and this is not something that I find works in every song, but some. And as you can see here as well, the volume is really low for it in the beginning, and I've made an automation that kind of sneaks it in through the song, because right here in the beginning you have a really like dry feeling of the instruments, like you're really close, and I didn't want to disturb that. But right here we have already a lot more space in the song, so we can afford to have some reverb on as well. So I EQ before this time. I usually EQ before when it comes to reverb because I find that it sounds more natural and you can sneak it in more easily. And I EQ pretty hard on the reverb. But that's just because you can't really hear this. In the beginning, you can't really hear it at all. So if we solo the reverb only, we can hear it right here. And it's really short, and I've made sure not to have any pre-delay at all, because that's going to be really noticeable. After that, I start to, instead of like taking frequencies away, I start adding frequencies and adding a bit of oomph, because that's also part of mastering, making it sound better. So this adds a bit of presence. And also increases the stereo image. Leaving touch, but flinching when it comes, doesn't matter how soft or sweet. And then after that, I've done some corrections with EQ. I have put a mid-side EQ on the sides. I want to make sure that I don't have phase issues in the bass. I've also made the mids calm down a bit, the low mids, and I've also increased the presence of the vocal a bit. So you can listen to this in the different parts. So you can hear that it sounds a bit more laid back or controlled, basically. And then I add some more. This is to add some more energy and some frequencies. So there's a with and without. No more energetic parts, perhaps. I then want to make some more adjustments listening through the song. So I want to take away a tiny amount of bass again, but more controlled than just a linear shift. So I've used a shelf here, and then right here, let's put that. These frequencies bothered me a bit and making it sound a bit muddy. So that's why I put tiny dynamic space there. So it just works when it's too much of that. And then we have these fun frequencies that I have increased a bit, but this band is only dynamic. So I'm trying to suppress them a bit because they're only too much, I think, at some points of the track. So that's why I've done that dynamically. And some presence again. And this is to make the sibilance go down a tiny bit. The ones you call home that share your name and your babe. If we listen now to the process track and switch over to the original after all these tiny changes. Let's take some more here. We can hear quite a difference actually. lot more clarity in the track. And when referencing like this, you have to be careful not to be fooled by any change in volume, because we are inclined to think that a volume change for a higher volume makes the track sound better. But in this case, we've actually changed the balance between the frequencies quite a bit. So it's going to sound louder, even though it's not. So you can hear that we really get a lot more energy. So we've cleaned it up. We've taken away frequencies that are a bit intrusive, and we've also polished a few things that maybe could sound clearer and more clean in this kind of song. And now we're on to limiting. And when limiting, I like to use several limiters in a row because I think that sounds better than just limiting a bit here and there instead of limiting everything on one single limiter. This is a multi-band limiter. What's good I find about this is that we can actually manipulate it a lot more than we can with a linear limiter. And we can prioritize certain frequencies if we want to, and we have a lot more power over what this limiter does. So right here in the beginning, it doesn't really do much. But when we get to the louder parts, we can see it really working. And typically, I don't like my limiters taking off more than about 3 dBs at a time, because I think it sounds better if they can do it in small steps. And again, this kind of limiter will actually change the balance in the song, so that's a thing you have to be careful with. This is going to color the sound as well as limit it, because we have different processing in different frequencies. And in this case, I only used one of these. Usually I use a couple of them. But then for a linear limiter, I used this one, and I put the gain up just as much as I put the output down. So this means the limiter won't actually change the loudness or the volume of this track, so I can still hear what's actually going on. I never make the song louder until the last step, because I want to be able to go back and forth and listen to what the limiting actually does. So I know that I'm not missing any noises that it makes or any distortion that I don't want. So we go to a louder part to see it actually work. So what we have here is, what I can do here to show you what happens is if I press down the Alt key, the output gain will be lowered when I increase the gain of this. So if we listen to this and I push it too much, you can clearly hear what actually happens. And we're losing a lot of the energy in the song, primarily the bass and the also a lot of mids. And it just gets boring to listen to this, right? So I always want to make sure that I don't push a song too far with a limiter. When we're limiting our material, we're also making sure that it's loud enough for example, Spotify. So now we've come to making our track louder. And I usually only do this in the very last step because I still want to be able to reference and maybe listen to this and compare the things that I've done. I usually increase the volume in a limiter as well. And this time, if we compare these two, this is the one that actually does the limiting. And here we have minus 14.7 out, because we have plus 14.7 in. So on this next limiter, I'm going to put that to -1. And that's just 1 dB under the max limit that we can actually physically have in the code. So now we can actually listen to the difference with this gain limiter on and with it off. And I've gone ahead and lowered the volume of the track a bit, so you can actually hear a difference, and maybe we'll get away with the YouTube audio compression. I don't know, let's hope. So this is now without. And with the gain. So it's a lot louder now. And we want to also make sure that the song is loud enough for Spotify. So we have a unit called integrated LUFS, which is Loudness Units integrated full scale, which is how we measure sounds basically in a computer or a digital environment. And we want to aim around minus 14 dB. Usually I tend to aim a little bit higher. And this is kind of like a mean value that counts all of the track. So we will have parts that are lower than this and also that are higher. So this is, if we reset this, this is a bit lower than 14, but overall with these strong parts as well, we're going to be able to average out a tiny bit over minus 14. And how loud you want a song to get is also dependent on the genre, I think. I tend to not push a song beyond what the song needs to be, unless it's a lot below minus 14, because then I will push it to at least minus 14 dB LUFS. And that's because of how the normalization works in, for example, Spotify and streaming platforms. So if the song doesn't need it really, I won't push it very hard. But some songs, like pop songs for instance, needs to be pushed a lot further. And you can do that with compression and also limiting. As long as you take it, I find, in smaller steps, because that's gonna sound a lot better. I'm a bit concerned about what YouTube compression is gonna make of this. We'll see. But I hope it sounds all right and that you can hear the difference, because it's so small changes that I'm making. But over the course of the process, we get a really big difference, but only by making very small changes. So this is what I've thought about when mastering this particular piece. And of course, mastering is also very genre dependent. So not every genre has the same ideal kind of sound when it comes to mastering. But usually I imagine that you are a mind reader and can read the songwriter's mind and the producer's mind and the mixing technician's mind and also the audience's mind. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that you found it inspiring and made you want to try mastering, because it's a lot of fun and you get to use your brain and your ears a lot, and it's kind of in a different way than when you produce music. Have a good rest of your day, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!